Welcome to Take 5, another 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda. Tonight I've been recording here at RTE Studios in Donnybrook. It's been a weird experience. Driving here, I don't think I've ever driven in such a short space of time from my home here to Donnybrook. I mean, the roads were empty. This campus here, which is normally bustling with program makers and all kinds of technicians and staff, is like a ghost town. And yet it's still running. Yet it's still operating. Why? Because they're committed as best they can to still getting the news out and getting the word out and getting information out to people while the rest of us are under lockdown. You know, there's a term that began to be used fairly recently called fake news. And at first I think that term had some validity because there were stories that people made up for political reasons that they would release on Facebook and Twitter. Now it's just become a term of abuse that if you don't like a fact, you just label it as fake news and people can just ignore the facts. You know, as the people of God, we're called to proclaim good news. Here for the people trying to give out the news and share about current affairs here at RTE, some of them are contracting coronavirus. Quite a disproportionate number of presenters and staff have been diagnosed positive with the coronavirus, but they believe that that's a risk that's worth taking to get a message out. I don't always agree with the way RTE have presented the message. At times I've disagreed with the agenda that I see them pursuing, but I admire their commitment to get their word out to as many people as possible. Jesus has commissioned us to share news, not fake news, not broadcast news, but good news. He said in Matthew 28, we are to go into all the world and preach the gospel to every nation, to every creature. And that's what we've got to do. Somebody who's much wiser than me once said, we must always preach the gospel as good news. If we don't preach it as good, then it's not the gospel. But if we don't make it interesting and preach it as news, then that isn't interesting either. The good news has got to be both good and news. Well, sometimes we fall into traditional patterns, traditional ways. Sometimes we think there's only one way to preach the gospel. And now all of a sudden we're finding ourselves in a new reality. For how long it's going to last, we don't know. I suspect most of us want things to go back to normal as soon as possible. But in the meanwhile, we can't put sharing the good news on hold. We can't say, oh well, we'll just leave that on one side and come back to it when this COVID-19 business is all over. We're still called to share the good news. Being social distancing does not prevent us from sharing the good news. Being on lockdown does not prevent us from sharing the good news. And so we need to find innovative and creative ways to share the gospel of Jesus Christ. You know, sometimes that means that I have to put a rein on my tongue and not say things I would like to say. In recent times, we've gone through elections and political turmoil here in Ireland. And you know, I've seen people, sometimes people that I know well, posting political things up on Facebook and you know, I just want to turn around and say, would you catch yourself on? But I can't, because that's not my mission. My mission is not to proclaim my political viewpoint. My mission is to share the good news of Jesus Christ with as many people as possible and not to create stumbling blocks that will prevent people from hearing that message. And I encourage you today, for whatever time this coronavirus thing's going to carry on for, this could be the time whenever you discover a creative way of sharing the gospel that's going to change people's lives forever. I once met a beautiful young woman in China who was sent to prison for her faith, was humiliated and tortured and horribly treated. But in the end, they had to release her early from the prison camp because they said if they didn't release her, then all the prisoners in the camp were going to come to Jesus. That's how effective she was. She was in a strange place and a strange condition, but she still found a way to share the good news. May God help you today as you find innovative ways to share the good news with others. Thank you for joining us. Join us again next time for another Take 5 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda.